Hey guys, tonight we're starting beneath a quiet elementary school in South Korea. The moon is hanging low, casting a soft silver glow across the old brick building. Crickets chirp from the hedges. But all attention is fixed on a gaping hole in the courtyard and excavation pit you're peering into, with a flashlight clutched tightly in hand. The site was supposed to be routine maintenance, broken pipe, or some outdated wiring. But then someone's shovel clinks against something hard, something not at all metallic. You lean closer. What's unearthed next stops time. 13 skeletons, intertwined like brambles in the dirt, their bones yellowed with age, skulls tilted as if mid-conversation or mid-scream. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know your location and what time it is where you're watching. Are you braving this at 2 a.m. like a champion? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stare into the pit. At first, you think it's one mass grave, but then your eyes adjust. The bodies are haphazardly arranged. Some appear folded, others sprawled as if dropped. No coffins, no caskets, no clear alignment toward east or west, none of the usual ritual markers. Their positions suggest something unplanned, or worse, rushed. It's a strange feeling standing here. The school behind you is still active. During the day, kids chase each other across this very yard, eating seaweed snacks and shouting about Pokemon cards. But here, just beneath their sneakers, these forgotten bones have waited in silence. Dust swirls across the playground. You glance at the school windows, and for a blink you think you see someone watching you from the second floor. It's too early to say whether the bones are centuries old or just decades, but already, strange anomalies begin to surface. 2 of the skulls have dental work far too modern for the time periods people are throwing around. One pelvis shows signs of surgical pins, possibly stainless steel, suggesting medical intervention no earlier than the 1940s. But the layers of earth above them, those speak of a much older burial. It doesn't make sense. Not yet. Then there's the smell. Most old burials don't emit anything beyond the dry scent of clay. But as the last crate is lifted, a faint metallic tang wafts through the air like rusted iron, mixed with something acrid. A smell like scorched fabric. You blink, and it's gone. But it lingers in your nose. That night, the principal issues a statement assuring parents there's no danger to students. Just an old foundation error. Nothing sinister. Construction will resume after the area is stabilized, she says. But even she doesn't sound convinced. Later, under a full moon, you sneak back to the site. The hole is refilled now, the dirt packed down. But the silence remains. You sit on a cold bench nearby, staring at the earth like it's keeping a secret. Somewhere down there, those 13 souls are waiting. And whether they were victims of war, ceremony, or something stranger, they've chosen this moment to come back into the light. You return the next morning, camera slung over your shoulder, and a half-hearted thermos of coffee in hand. The pit is gone, sealed over with neat, rectangular concrete blocks, almost like nothing happened. The only evidence now is a row of orange traffic cones and a few leftover boot prints in the dirt. You crouch beside the edge, running your fingers along the newly poured cement. It's warm, just a little, like the ground itself is still digesting what was pulled from it. What still bothers you is how disjointed the skeletons were. Not just jumbled, but positioned in ways that suggest confusion or restraint. One body had its arms twisted up behind its back. Another was curled so tightly you'd think they'd been packed into a suitcase. And yet there were no ropes, no handcuffs, nothing to imply forced positioning, just the eerie sense that whatever happened was messy, fast, and final. You managed to get a copy of the first field report. Inside, the site supervisor scribbled a note. Bones appear disarticulate, suggest trauma or post-mortem relocation. Estimate 7,100 years old. But here's the odd part. Several long bones, the femurs and humera, show healed fractures, old injuries that occurred while these people were alive. One tibia had what looked like a bullet graze, fully healed. These people lived rough lives, or lived through something rough. And then there's the second oddity. 5 of the skulls are unusually small, not quite children, but not fully adult, either possibly teenagers, possibly malnourished. You try to remember your high school biology. Growth plates, cranial sutures, all of it suddenly matters when you're trying to decode 13 voiceless people, their only legacy being how their bones now confuse the living. That afternoon, the lead forensic specialist, Dr. Kim, holds a short press briefing. She's the kind of woman who talks with her hands but keeps her face unreadable, like a poker player. She confirms that preliminary testing has begun but urges caution. Some signs indicate the remains may span different time frames, she says. This may not be a single event. The room stirs. Reporters mutter into their mics. You raise an eyebrow. Different time frames? What does that even mean? You wait outside the lab, trying to spot something useful in the medical waste bins. You've stooped to that level. Nothing. But inside the building, behind frosted windows and government locked doors, scientists are laying bones out like puzzles on stainless steel trays. They clean each with soft brushes and dental picks, carefully cataloging each fracture, every worn molar and healed joint. One skull draws particular attention. Its orbital bone is crushed inward, as if something heavy had been brought down on the face deliberately. There's no cracking around the edges though, suggesting it happened after death. Ritual defacement, or someone trying to hide an identity? Historians still argue whether facial mutilation was ever part of punishment rituals in post-occupation Korea. Most say, no, it's a Western misinterpretation of shamanic rites. Others argue it's more pragmatic. Break the face, break recognition. In wartime, erasing someone could be as easy as making sure no one could recognize them later. The dental team finds something even stranger. One molar preserved in surprisingly good shape has a silver filling. Not gold, not porcelain. Silver. Common in the late 20th century, rare before that. The trouble is, that particular jawbone had been buried beneath another body one, with erosion patterns suggesting it had been in the ground longer. So wait, the newer body was on top? You blink. That implies reburial, or rearrangement. Someone came back. Someone opened the grave after the initial burial, and added more body sore, maybe even took some away. A fringe theory emerges quietly in a university hallway. One grad student, red-eyed and half-sane from caffeine, swears he saw x-rays of what looked like trephinationan ancient surgical practice of drilling holes into the skull. He pulls up a blurry photo on his phone. Sure enough, one cranium has a neat circular hole on the top left, its edges slightly smoothed. Not from trauma, not from decomposition, something deliberate, possibly pre-death. You ask him what it means. Brain-spirit escape, maybe? He offers with a shrug. Or just a way to relieve pressure. Could be shamanic, could be experimental medicine. Both answers are terrible. You think back to the concrete now covering that ground. If this was a crime scene, it's been tampered with. If this was a ritual site, it's been interrupted. Either way, 13 people were laid to restore not so much rest beneath a school where nobody seemed to know or care for 70 years. That night, you dream of a bell ringing from underground. In the dream, it's soft at first, faint, like wind chimes, then louder, metallic, urgent. You wake up sweaty, hand on your chest. But it wasn't a dream. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you realize one of the recovered skeletons had a tiny bell tied around what was once an ankle. No one's figured out why. A quiet chill spreads across your shoulders. You suddenly remember something a tour guide once told you at a Joseon-era folk village. In ancient times, he said, bells were tied to the dead not to honor them but to warn the living. You pace back and forth in your apartment, the image of those crushed bones and quiet bells rattling around in your brain like loose screws in a washing machine. There's something off about all of this, not just the physical remains, but the timing, the way it's been swept under a polite rug of bureaucracy. So you start where most strange histories in this part of the world begin, with the Japanese occupation. From 1910 to 1945, Korea was under Japanese colonial rule, a time of harsh control, forced assimilation, and secret prisons. You dig through old maps of the area where the school now stands. Sure enough, an old military installation used to sit just a few blocks away, guardhouses, barracks, and an outbuilding marked simply as Storage B. You squint at the faded ink. It's right where the school gymnasium now squats like a concrete beetle. Storage, huh? That term's always suspicious in old war records. Could have meant supplies. or people. You head to the city records office, where the clerk frowns when you ask for maps from before 1950. Fire destroyed most of those, she mumbles, but eventually disappears into the back and returns with a dusty box marked Kulm, Domian architectural blueprints. Inside is a brittle floor plan from 1938. There's a cellar, almost dead center of the property, a basement-level cell. No plumbing, no stairs, just a ladder down from a narrow trapdoor. You exhale slowly. That's not storage. As you trace your fingers across the paper, you picture it. A dim, damp pit. Just big enough to hold 13 people, maybe more. You wonder what it sounded like in there, what it smelled like, if anyone ever came back up. Historians still argue whether Korea under Japanese rule ever conducted systematic disappearances like in other occupied territories. Officially, the Japanese Empire denied such actions outside of criminal arrests. But unofficially, well, even the emperor's own archives went missing post-surrender. Things get buried. Later that night, you find yourself speaking with an old man in a tucked-away tea shop. He's retired, a former teacher at that school. Back in the 1960s, you tell him what you're researching. His gaze drops to the floor. We used to hear things under the classroom, he murmurs, stirring his tea without sipping it. Knocking, late at night after rain. We thought it was pipes. You ask if anyone ever investigated. He shakes his head, lips thin. It was easier not to. That phrase echoes in your mind as you walk back into the neighborhood. Easier not to. How many times has that sealed up history like a tomb? Back at the excavation site, which now resembles a parking lot more than an ancient crime scene, you notice something new. A young girl, maybe 6 years old, stands at the fence. She's wearing a bright yellow backpack and staring at the cement with furrowed brows. My mom said this school is haunted, she says without looking at you. You kneel beside her. Why does she think that? She said the land doesn't like noise, though when they built the music room, the ceiling kept falling down. You chuckle lightly, trying to keep the mood light. That's just old construction. She doesn't laugh. My teacher said not to step on the middle square, she whispers. That's where the voices come up. You follow her gaze and spot a patch of cement, slightly discolored from the rest. A faint stain, like water damage, but in the shape of a boot print. Areal. Singular boot print. You swallow hard and make a mental note to come back at night with a thermal camera. That same evening, a journalist friend of yours sends you a translated newspaper clipping from 1941. It describes a community disturbance involving a group of arrested laborers. It says they were relocated for questioning and never reappeared. The location? Vaguely phrased as Block C. But in wartime cartography, Block C overlaps this very plot of land. But here's the twist. The article doesn't list 13. It lists 16. Where are the other 3? You try to focus, but your thoughts fray. Could there still be more down there? Were some removed and relocated? Or worse, were they kept alive elsewhere? That night, you dream again. The bell from before is louder, clearer. This time, it's accompanied by the sound of wet footsteps. Not running, just pacing back and forth across cold tile. You wake up freezing. Your room unusually damp, like you've left the window open in a storm. But everything is closed. Everything but your closet door, which now stands ajar by an inch. Just an inch. You start your morning with a coffee that tastes like mud and a stack of police reports printed on office paper still warm from the copier. You're digging deeper, now not just into bones and maps, but into the stories that locals whispered behind closed doors. The deeper you go, the more tangled things get. You're no longer looking at one buried secret. You're staring down a whole knot of them. First up, missing persons reports. You cross-reference names, ages, and dates with anyone gone missing within a 10-kilometer radius of the school since, 1920. It's a slog, and most records from before 1955 are spotty at best. But still, a pattern starts to emerge, if not a neat one, then at least one you can squint at sideways. 13 reports, spread across decades, all ages, all disappeared under murky circumstances. But there's a peculiar clustering between 1000 1,939, and 1,943. 6 young men and 1 woman, all in their late teens or early 20s, all labeled runaways or labor deserters. You don't buy it. Who runs away in clean shoes, leaving their lunch packed neatly on the kitchen table? You track down someone who might remember. A hunched old woman with a blue knit scarf and cataracts like fogged glass. Her brother, Min Jae, went missing in 1941. She's the last living sibling. I was 11, she says, voice thin as rice paper. He left to deliver grain to the depot and never came home. The police said he must have gone south, but we found his bike in a ditch. No footprints, just the bell, still ringing. There's that sound again. You ask where the ditch was. She points directly toward the school. You dig further, flipping through old community bulletins from the wartime years. One issue, dated August 1942, features an announcement about a disciplinary facility relocation. No details, just a stern paragraph. And a list of items prohibited in the area: flashlights, cameras, tape recorders. Tape recorders in 1942? That's oddly specific. Historians still argue whether Korea had localized detention camps during this period. Official documents are vague at best. Some claim such facilities were only ever constructed in Manchuria or Japan proper. Others suggest secret holding centers, dotted across the peninsula, temporary, makeshift, and disposable. Places that could be erased just as easily as the people inside them. But here's the strangest piece of the puzzle so far. Local school archives from the 1970s contain a photograiny black and white, slightly torn of a group of students planting trees along the school's western wall. You almost miss it, but in the background, behind a row of saplings, is something that doesn't belong. A mound of dirt. No grass, no flowers, just earth freshly turned, and something sticking out of it. You zoom in. A boot. Just the toe. Covered in mud. You call the school to ask about the tree planting ceremony. The receptionist puts you on hold for 10 minutes, then comes back with a clipped, nervous tone. Those records are sealed, she says. Staff transition year. Nothing unusual. Unusual? Sure. You press a little harder. Eventually someone tips you off. Talk to Mr. Lee, a retired gym coach who'd worked there in the 80s. You find him sitting under a canopy of vines behind a convenience store, chewing on dried squid. He squints when you mention the bones. Should have happened sooner, he says. That place has always been wrong. Kids used to hear things, crying under the gym floor, but no one believed them. I stopped holding PE there, made him run outside. You ask why. He leans closer. Because once, I stayed late to fix the storage lights. Heard my name whispered from the basement. But there is no basement. You don't ask if he's serious. You already know. A few nights later, you break into the school grounds again. Not out of rebellion, really. Just desperation. You bring with you a thermal camera, a flashlight, and a half-eaten granola bar for moral support. The gym looms in the dark like a sleeping animal. You scan the floor. Nothing. Nothing. Then something. A glowing rectangle on the thermal cam. Not hot, exactly. Just less cold than everything else. You knock gently. It echoes back. A hollow sound. Like a box beneath the floorboards. Your heart pounds. You mark the spot with chalk. As you turn to leave, you hear it. Just once. A single, short chime. Like a bell from deep below. Later, you confirm it with archived blueprints. The gym was built in 1950. 3 right, over where the Japanese blueprint marked Storage B. You pause. You're not the first to find this. And if they built over it, someone knew what they were covering, which begs the most unsettling question of all. Why 13? Why exactly that number? If 16 were arrested, and only 13 found, what happened to the others? Escaped? Removed later? Or relocated before burial? You don't know. Not yet. But the weight of their story is slowly pressing up through the cement again. And you get the feeling that no matter how many layers are laid down, this ground is never going to stay quiet for long. You can't let it go. You try, for maybe a day, convincing yourself to move on. to let the investigators handle it, to return to safe little bedtime mysteries about Viking ships or forgotten castles. But the 13 won't let you. They've taken root in your brain like ivy, wrapping tighter the more you resist. So you go where the story is, heading into the lab. The forensic lab is fluorescent and frigid, and the bones are laid out like museum displays, each set carefully reconstructed on individual metal tables, ribs like bird cages, skull fragments like jigsaw pieces. There's a sterile, clinical calm to the place, but underneath it all, something breathes. Maybe it's just your imagination, or maybe it's memory still clinging to marrow. Dr. Kim greets you with a flat smile and a sigh. You again. You're polite. You bring coffee. You promise not to touch anything. She walks you over to table 4. This one's been bothering me, she says. Juvenile, female, maybe 14. Tibial epiphysis isn't fused, but the teeth are unusually worn, like she chewed on metal. You glance down. The skeleton is small, the jawbone delicate, but the teeth, they're flattened. Not from grinding, but abrasion. Something constant, mechanical. Braces? You guess. She shakes her head. No appliances, no wires, just erosion, like biting a chain. Of the 13 sets of remains, 5 had personal items, 3 had nothing, and 5 had objects that didn't match their estimated time of death. One body had a Walkman, a rusted-out cassette player, the kind from the 1980s, crushed beneath the pelvis. The bones it was buried with? Dated to at least 1945. You blink, then you blink again. There's no way. But the carbon dating is precise within a 5-year range. The contradiction is staggering. Historians still argue whether environmental contamination can cause dating discrepancies like this. Some insist post-burial activity like soil movement, chemical spills, or groundwater corrosion could shift readings. Others argue it points to something more intentional, like grave tampering, or multiple burials at different times, all shoved into one hole. It's becoming clear. This wasn't a single event. It was a layered secret. A corpse palimpsest, as Dr. Kim dryly puts it, when the dead are buried over the dead, each generation erasing the last. You pause by another table. A long, narrow body, male, late 20s, a fractured sternum and cracked orbital bone, signs of blunt trauma. But most jarring is the shape of the spinal column, curved unnaturally. Not from genetics, Dr. Kim says. From being bound, possibly for weeks. You feel your stomach twist. Who are these people? You push for more forensic results. Blood typing's underway. Mitochondrial DNA testing has already begun. Small successes, fragments matched against family registries. But here's the catch. So far, none of them match any known relatives in South Korea's government databases. Statistically, that shouldn't happen, Dr. Kim mutters, scrolling through the data. We're casting a wide net looking for maternal matches, even cousins. Nothing. You raise a quiet possibility. What if their families didn't survive to register? She looks at you sharply, then sighs. Then we're dealing with something darker than we thought. That night, you head home, but don't sleep. You lie on your back, eyes wide, listening to the soft hum of your fridge, and wondering why 13 people could vanish so cleanly that no one, not a single living soul, has stepped forward to claim them. And then your inbox pings. An anonymous tip. Just a name and a message. Ask about the salt pits at Ojinri? You're not wrong. You Google Ojinri. It's a farming village about 40 minutes east. Quiet. Mostly elderly population. And most interestingly, a decommissioned salt processing facility that shut down in 1946. You pull up satellite photos. The plant is just a concrete skeleton now, crumbling walls and wild grass. But you notice a strange overlap. Ojinri is exactly 1.7 kilometers from the school. Close enough to hide something, far enough to forget. The next morning, you drive there. The air smells like rust and salt, and the plant is a husk graffiti on the walls. Broken windows, birds nesting in old ducks. But something about the way the wind moves through the ruins makes you freeze. You follow the broken path behind the building, where the ground dips into a dry ravine. There's nothing visible at first, just weeds. Then, under a pile of rocks, you find it. A child's shoe, half buried, stiff with age. You hold it in your hand, and it breaks apart leather, crumbling into flakes. But inside the sole, stamped into the lining, is a production date, 1984. You stare at the shoe, then back toward the school, then at the path that connects them. You realize what you're looking at isn't just one forgotten atrocity, it's a corridor of them. Some unearthed system used this entire region as a burial ground, a dumping zone, across decades, and 13 was just the number they stopped at. The shoe still lingers in your hand even after you've set it down. There's something too intimate about it, like holding someone's breath that never made it out. You sit in the overgrown lot behind the salt plant and stare at the space where the earth sags unnaturally. A few flies buzz nearby, circling the same patch of cracked dirt, the kind of detail your brain stubbornly files under nothing, while your gut keeps screaming dig. But you don't have a shovel, just questions, and a growing sense that everything you're uncovering is about to meet resistance. Back in the city, a small crowd has started to form around the school's entranced knot people, protesting. Not even mourners, just watchers. Older folks mostly. Silent. Still, as if waiting for something. A few carry offerings bowls of rice, candles in jam jars, even one plate of hard-boiled eggs. You ask a woman what it's for. She shrugs. If the dead don't know their names, they eat anything. It's not a tradition you've heard of before, but she's dead serious. Inside the school, things are spiraling. Students have begun reporting strange incidents. Loud thumps in the ceiling, chairs moved during lunch, faucets turning on by themselves. The janitorial staff brushes it off as plumbing quirks. But you know how stories like this start. It's not about what's happening, it's about who's noticing. The faculty eventually holds a closed-door meeting. You're not invited, but someone leaks part of the agenda: potential structural instability and psychological disturbance among staff and students. You almost laugh. It's not the building that's cracking, it's the story they tried to bury. You make a call to a university archivist you met during a folklore conference last year. She remembers a study from the Seven Taiza quietly suppressed field report documenting how rural schools often overlap with Japanese colonial sites. Not a conspiracy, just practical land use. Her voice drops to a whisper. But those lands were often tainted, sites of punishment, interrogation. Some weren't marked on any civilian map. You ask if she has names. She hesitates. Historians still argue whether the colonial government used schools as post-war cleansing zones to overwrite violence with virtue. You can guess where I stand. She emails you a copy of the report. Only 20 pages, typed on brittle onion, skin paper. One page is mostly blacked out, but what's left makes your breath catch. Several undocumented internments beneath modern structures. Remnants suggest multiple generations buried sequentially. Assumed population, transient, unregistered, or silenced during occupation. Unregistered, transient, silenced. You reread that sentence again and again. You call Dr. Kim. I think we're dealing with time layers, you tell her. She sighs. I'm starting to think so too. She's just finished analyzing another skeleton, the youngest yet, 8 years old. No dental work, minimal erosion. Death estimated in the mid-1980s. She found a tiny toy car clenched in the left hand. Korean make, manufactured in 1983. Still had red paint on the hood. You don't say anything for a moment. Someone was still using that pit in the 80s? You ask. She nods. And maybe later. Who knows how far this goes. That night, you receive another message. This time, it's a video clip, barely 30 seconds. The quality is terrible, like it was shot on an old VHS camcorder. But you see enough. A grainy image of a concrete pit. Flashlight beams bouncing, and then a hand. A small one, half covered in dirt, fingers curled like they're trying to grasp the air. The file is named, Keep Digging, MP4. No sender, no metadata. You sleep with the lights on. The next day, you confront the local school board, demanding access to old construction permits. Most of them claim ignorance, but one junior officer slips up. We only approved the above-ground extension. The basement was pre-existing. You pounce. What basement? He freezes. 2 meant the crawl space. Nothing else is on file. There it is again, the thing that's easier not to name. You return to the school that night, this time with ground-penetrating radar borrowed from a nearby geology lab. You scan beneath the gym, near the same spot the thermal camera had reacted to days earlier. The radar beeps. Then again. Then again. You're staring at what looks like void space, a rectangular cavity, about 4 meters by 3, with layered soil anomalies beneath it. You're no expert, but you don't need to be. There's something under the school, and it's not empty. You leave a red flag on the site, and for the first time, you realize you're not alone. As you pack up, a figure appears near the fence, just standing, watching. The streetlight flickers and hides their face. Then they turn and vanish into the alley. You race after them, but they're gone, just like the truth has been, again and again, for 80 years. You don't sleep. Not really. You lie in bed with your eyes wide open, the red dot on your phone charger blinking like it's trying to tap out a warning in Morse code. That image, the rectangular void beneath the school, the small hand in the video, the fleeting figure in the alley, it loops in your head like a fever dream. By morning, you've made a decision. You're going into that space, but not yet. First, you visit the city's engineering office. This time, you're asking specifically about underground tunnels. You don't expect much, they usually act like everything pre-internet doesn't exist, but the clerk surprises you. She pulls out a yellowing infrastructure map from the 1940s. You want this? She asks, already halfway bored. You do. Oh, you really do. It's hand-drawn, annotated in careful, faded Hangul. The school is marked, but so is something else. Narrow tunnel snaking from under the old gymnasium out toward the southeast. The tunnel is labeled Kikaton, mechanical corridor. You trace it with your finger. It ends beneath what's now a parking lot behind an old church. Later that day, you're on site, following your digital GPS and this ancient map like you're looking for buried treasure. And, in a way, you are. The lot is cracked and overgrown, the church long since boarded up. But at the far end, behind a cluster of rusted bicycles, you spot a metal access hatch sunk into the asphalt. Padlocked. Weathered. You tap it with your boot. Hollow. Back at your apartment, you make a quick call to a friend of a friend, a civil engineering grad who owes you one. You meet after dark, with bolt cutters and gloves. The lock gives after a minute of convincing. The hatch groans as it opens. The metal squeals like it hasn't been touched in 50 years. Below, a rusted ladder disappears into darkness. You descend, careful and slow. The air smells like dust and mildew and something sharper, something faintly coppery. You click on your flashlight. The tunnel is narrow, maybe shoulder width, with old pipes bolted to the walls and wires dangling like vines. You walk hunched for what feels like forever, 20 meters, then 30. Then you see it. A second hatch, this one sunken into a concrete floor panel. It's unlocked. You brace yourself, push it open, and emerge into a room. A room. It's wide enough to stand in, maybe 4 meters across. There's a desk against the wall, rusted metal cabinets, chains mounted to one corner. But the most unsettling feature is this. The walls are covered in soot, blackened, as if someone tried to burn their way out or in. On the ground, you find a small object, a pencil, the tip broken, the eraser half used. Not old enough to match the 1940s. You exhale slowly. Someone else has been here. Recently, you film the space with your phone, sweeping every corner. When you replay the footage later, you'll notice something you didn't see in person, a faint outline on the wall, drawn in charcoal. A figure. Not a sketch, not art, just a crude stick figure with its arms stretched above its head and an X scrawled over the mouth. Back on the surface, you sit on the curb, hands shaking. You try to piece it together. You're dealing with something much more complex than a mass grave. This was a facility, a chamber, maybe for detention, maybe for punishment, but it was used, reused, covered, and then forgotten. Historians still argue whether the Japanese military employed civilian tunnels in Korea for secret detainment. Most deny it. The records don't exist. But then again, records can be burned. You return to the lab the next day and meet Dr. Kim mid-dissection. She pulls you aside. Her tone is low. We found something inside one of the rib cages. You raise your eyebrows. A note, folded into a metal capsule. It was rusted shut, but we pried it open. It's in bad shape, most of it unreadable. She holds it out. The writing is tiny, faded, Korean, slanted and panicked. But one phrase is still legible. Tell my brother, the floor is not real. You stand frozen. Not real? You ask if they've analyzed the capsule. It's not Korean, not Japanese either. Alloy composition's weird. Could be Western, 1960s era, maybe. You don't know what to say, but you do know where to go. That night, you return to the school. It's cold, unusually so. The gym lights flicker overhead as you walk to the red chalk spot you marked. The wind is still. Not a single leaf moves. You lower a stethoscope eyes. You brought unearthed the concrete. You listen. At first, nothing. Then, a tap. Soft, deliberate, like someone knocking once. Then again, 3 taps. Then, silence. You sit back, heart racing. It's not the pipes. It's not the wind. It's something or someone still trying to speak from the other side of the floor. You don't leave the school grounds right away. You sit cross-legged on the gym floor, the stethoscope still pressed to the concrete, like a child listening to the ocean through a shell. You wait for more knocking, but the silence stretches on, thick and absolute. Still, those 3 taps echo in your head, like a metronome, ticking against your ribs. Back at home, you transcribe the note recovered from the capsule. What little of it is legible. Tell my brother, the floor is not real. They bring food once a week, sometimes none. The others are shadows now. Don't trust the lights. They flicker before. Unreadable. If they come again. Burn mark. I am not the last. I am not the last. You whisper it aloud, testing how it sounds in the air. It's a message meant for someone, maybe a sibling who never knew what happened, or maybe for anyone who would eventually dig far enough to listen. You meet with Dr. Kim again the next morning. She's bleary-eyed, barely speaking until her second coffee. But then she drops something new on your desk. Found this inside a vertebral cavity. Not common. Someone slipped it in post-mortem. She holds up a small, hexagonal button. Worn. Almost smooth. You squint. There's a faint symbol pressed into eye tone you've seen before. A stylized cherry blossom. Japanese military. Not a uniform button, she says. This design was used on personal ID tags, commemorative buttons handed out during conscription ceremonies in the 1930s and early 40s. You look at her. So, was one of the victims a soldier? Maybe, she says. Or someone who killed one. The button was tucked deep in the ribcage. Hidden, not worn. Someone buried it like a signature. Or a warning. Historians still argue whether resistance fighters during the occupation used symbolic burial practices. Some say histories of hiding artifacts with bodies as a final insult to the empire. Others claim it's apocryphal, folklore built after the fact to give the dead purpose. But even folklore leaves behind fingerprints. And speaking of resistance, your inbox dings again. An email, no subject, no name, just a PDF attachment. Red dust. Security clearance 1944. PDF. You open it slowly. Inside is a manifest. Black type on gray paper. A list of 17 names, all marked with dates and codes. You skim the names until your stomach drops. One of them is Min Jae, the boy who went missing with a bell on his bike in 1941. Another name is a girl, Kim Airborne 1929. Status, hold, indefinite. You recognize that name too. The archivist mentioned her in Pasinga missing factory worker, rumored to have been arrested for distributing anti-Japanese leaflets. Her family never found her. You read to the bottom of the page. Project Red Dust, Site Delta. There's no location, but your pulse is already surging. You call the archivist. Have you heard of Project Red Dust? Long pause. Then softly, yes, but only in whispers. We thought it was destroyed. What was it? What was it? A network of transitional detention sites, she says. Places people were moved to before being moved elsewhere. sometimes never moved again. There were rumors of experiments, sleep deprivation, isolation chambers, no official record, but the name keeps popping up. You ask if she knows where Site Delta was. No, she says, but the military called it the Gongyung Station, which roughly translates to place of echo. Place of echo. You sit with that for a while. Then you realize something that freezes you solid. Echoes. That's exactly what the gym sounds like. You race back to your files, pull up the ground radar scan, the void under the floor. You realize you never measured the vertical depth of the cavity, just the width. You go back and check. 4 meters wide, 6 meters deep. That's not a tunnel, that's a chamber. You return to the school that night with a portable audio mic and a friend just in case. You position the mic at the red X where you heard the taps. You begin recording. An hour passes. Just silence. Then movement. A single, dragging shuffle. Then singing. Faint. Warbled. A child's voice. You crank the gain. The lyrics aren't clear, but the rhythm is unmistakable. Lullaby. Something old. Older than the building. Something passed down orally through generations. You send the audio file to a folklorist who teaches at a university in Gwangju. He calls back that night. That melody, he says, is a death song. You ask him to explain. You crank the gain. The lyrics aren't clear, but the rhythm is unmistakable. A lullaby. Something old, older than the building. Something passed down orally through generations. You send the audio file to a folklorist who teaches at a university in Gwangju. He calls back that night. That melody, he says, is a death song. You ask him to explain. Traditionally sung during funerals in Gyeongsang province, usually whispered by children when walking behind a casket. The lyrics are improvised. It's not meant to be heard again after the burial. You stare at your laptop screen. But someone down there is singing it. He says nothing. The call ends, and you're left sitting in your dark apartment, the audio file still looping, as that distant, cracked little voice hums softly through your speakers. Then the voice stops, and something knocks again. 4 times this time, like it's learning how to count. You don't listen to the rest of the audio. Not yet. Something in you, something primal and quiet and hardwired for survival tells you it's better not to. Not while you're alone. Not with the lights off. You close the file and push your laptop away, like it's hissing, but the knocks stay with you. 4 this time. The pattern is shifting. Someone or something is answering. You dive back into the list of names from the red dust file. 17 total. You count again. 13 found beneath the school. That leaves 4 unaccounted for. 4. You feel a chill crawl up your neck like a centipede. If the 13 are accounted for, maybe the knocks aren't coming from them. Maybe they're from the 4 who never made it that far. That idea haunts you. You dig into public records, hunting for those 4 names. Most searches hit dead ends. Disconnected birth registries. Rural village closures. Entire family lines labeled missing after the Korean War. And one triggers a match. Name, Go Yen-jun. Listed as deceased in 1944. Then again in 1987. Wait, you double check. The name is identical. The birth date? Off by a day. The hometown? Exactly the same. You call in a favor at the municipal office to pull the physical records. The 1987 entry is a handwritten death certificate. No occupation, no next of kin, no cause of death. Just a single sentence typed in faded black ribbon. Remains found during pipeline expansion. No formal burial permitted. You track down the engineer who signed off on the report. He's retired now, lives in a small house perched on a windy hill outside Seoul. You meet him in person, offering tea and old photos and your most persuasive silence. He's reluctant, but eventually he caves. We weren't supposed to dig that deep, he mutters. The blueprints told us to avoid the East Trench, but one of the backhoes clipped a sealed shaft. Concrete plug. Heavy. We opened it. You lean forward. What did you find? He looks at the ground, voice distant. Nothing. That's the thing. There should have been something. The space was big, square, but clean. No debris, no bodies, just scratch marks on the walls. Scratch marks? Human height, he adds, like someone tried to climb out. One word, over and over. You whisper it before he says it. Salier, save me. He nods. You leave that interview shaken, your hands trembling on the steering wheel. If Go Yeon-jun didn't die in 1944, where was he until 1987? And what about the other three? Were they locked in that chamber longer? Used for something? Kept alive? You can't answer that, but you're sure of one thing now. The chamber beneath the gym wasn't just a grave. It was a cage, and it was used long after the war. You revisit the tunnel, the hidden access point behind the church. This time, you bring rope, lighting, a spare phone with a backup battery. You descend again, retracing your steps.
The room is the same. Charcoal scrawls on the wall. That eerie stick figure with the X over the mouth. But now, there's something else. Footprints. Fresh ones. They circle the room in looping, erratic paths. Some small, others large. Bare feet and boots. The dust has been disturbed recently, and in the far corner, a small pile of objects. A cracked mirror, a rubber ball, a torn book of children's prayers, and one tiny brass school bell. You kneel. The bell is old, the kind you'd hang from a cat's collar or give a child to call for help. You turn it over in your hand. It jingles faintly, a whisper of metal on metal, and then, behind you, the echo of a footstep. You spin. No one's there. The tunnel is empty, but something is wrong with the light. It flickers not the bulb, but the darkness itself. Like the air is rippling. You take a step backward, and your boot hits something hollow, a panel of wood beneath your feet. You crouch and clear the dirt. It's a trapdoor, old and rotted, sealed shut with rusted nails. You pry it open. A ladder drops down into blackness. You hesitate, then descend. This second chamber is colder unnaturally so. The walls are closer, the ceiling lower. On the far wall is a single line of faded red paint. It reads, "Do not listen when they whisper." You freeze. You realize your ears are ringing, not with tinnitus, but with sound, whispering, just below perception, like 13 voices, or maybe 4. Or maybe one that never stopped talking. You climb back out, fast. You don't look back. Above ground, the world feels wrong now. Like a film stretched too tight. The sky too bright. The people too loud. But you're not imagining this. You check your recording. The audio is full of low-frequency voices. They don't form words, but they pulse in a rhythm. 4 beats, then 3, then 4 again, like someone remembering a pattern, or trying to. You send it to Dr. Kim. She replies instantly. "Meet me. You need to see the newest scan." You do. She lays it out on the table. A 3D reconstruction of the chamber beneath the gym. Bones are visible, all 13, but one is different. It's curled in a fetal position, facing the others. Still intact, still looking right at them. She points. We didn't notice before. No signs of decay, no evidence of trauma. You stare at the shape of the skull, then at the bell, then back at the whispering you recorded. And for the first time, you wonder, what if one of them never died at all? You stare at the 3D scan until the image starts to blur, not from lack of detail, but because your eyes simply refuse to believe what they're seeing. The body, the one curled among the other 13, isn't just intact. It's preserved. No weathering, no insect damage, no soil erosion. Dr. Kim leans in beside you and murmurs, "We didn't carbon date it yet, but I already know it's newer than the others." You nod, your mouth too dry to respond. You already feel the weight of what's coming. If this body is new, then someone recently quietly added to the pile. I think someone is still using the space, she says softly. And if so, who? You pull up the site. Manifest again. 17 names. 13 accounted for. 1 possibly dead in 1,987. That leaves 3 missing. But now this new body. Could it be one of the unaccounted? You ask him about dental records. Too early to say. But whoever it was, they weren't just dumped in, they were placed. She brings up a note in the autopsy log. Hands folded, right over left, feet aligned. Head turned east. That's ritual. That's not how people bury their enemies. That's how you bury one of your own. You leave the lab with a storm in your head. You find yourself walking aimlessly through the streets, passing noodle shops and neon signs, none of it sinking in. You're trying to understand, why would someone keep coming back to that pit? Why now? You loop back to Ojenri, the salt village, hoping for a new thread to pull. The site looks the same, but a woman watches you this time. Mid-60s, plain clothes, eyes sharp. You're the one asking about the school, she says. It's not a question. You approach carefully. You know something? She hesitates, then nods. Not facts, but memory. I was 12 when my cousin vanished. A boy, always saying to himself, you feel your spine tighten. What year? You ask. She blinks slowly. 1,983.
You exhale. My family. We searched. Everywhere. But no one wanted to help. The police said he probably crossed the border. My father said something else. What? That the land eats noise. She looks at you directly now. And he was loud. You ask for a name. She gives it to you. Go Yeonjun. The second death certificate. The name that wouldn't go away. You show her a blurred scan from the chamber. She nods once. That's him. That's how he used to sleep. Curled like that. Like a cat. Your throat tightens. You drive back toward the school, headlights carving through the dusk. You park, climb the fence again by now. It's routine, and make your way back to the marked panel. The concrete is undisturbed, but something's off. You smell smoke. Not fire, just smoke. The kind that hangs in the air long after the match is gone. You crouch, pressing your hand to the floor. It's faintly warm. You knock once. No response. You knock again 4 times. Silence. You close your eyes and whisper into the concrete. Go Yeonjun. Still nothing, but when you lift your head, there it is. A single word, written in chalk, just beside your bag, Anya. Don't. You didn't write it. You didn't bring chalk, and you were alone when you came in. You stand slowly. Your heart is pounding. Not from fear, well, not only from fear, but from recognition. Because this is what survivors do. They warn. They leave messages for the next poor soul too curious to walk away. You step back, leave the gym, and decide it's time to look deeper into red dust. You comb through everything again, but this time, you search military diaries, not official reports, but personal notebooks scribbled in margins. You find one. Lieutenant H. Matsuda, January 1944. One page stands out. Site, Delta fully sealed. Orders received. No further entries. Room 4 last to be closed. Subject inside displayed. Irregular behavior. Singing continued after cessation. No signs of physical decline. Recommend permanent sealing. You stare at the word subject. Not prisoner, not person, subject. And this, room 4. What if that is the chamber under the gym? The next entry is more chilling. Echo phenomenon remains. All personnel instructed not to respond to tapping. Psychological contagion suspected. Chamber redesignated hollow mouth. You lean back in your chair, the room spinning slightly. Hollow mouth. The name rolls around your head like a pebble in a tin can. You realize something. Maybe the 13 weren't just buried. Maybe they were fed to whatever or whoever waited down there. Not sacrificed, not ritually, but left to sing, to whisper, to echo. Historians still argue whether the Japanese military performed psychological experiments on long-term isolation. But several post-war intelligence files, leaked during the 60s, hinted at black sites used to test what they called persistent vocal retention, the idea that human voices could be preserved repeated, indefinitely inside sealed spaces. Ridiculous? Probably. But you've heard the whispers. You have recordings. You start to suspect the chamber isn't just haunted. It might be hungry. And the 13th body, the one placed recently, wasn't forgotten. It was an offering.
You go back to the beginning, not to the school, not to the pit, to the first sound you heard. Those 3 little knocks on the concrete. You sit at your desk and replay the original audio headphones on, screen dark, eyes closed. The knocks are soft but precise, hollow, like knuckles on old wood. You rewind, listen again, and then it hits you. They weren't random, they were in response. You check your own voice, caught faintly on the mic before the knocks started. Is anyone down there? 3 seconds later, knock, knock, knock. Not tapping for help, not signaling danger. Answering, yes. You drop the headphones and stare at the wall. If something beneath the gym can hear you and choose to respond, then it's listening, and has been listening. Maybe since before the gym existed. Maybe since the tunnel was just dirt and fear. You send the audio to an acoustic specialist, someone who used to analyze submarine pings and seismic rumblings. You don't say where it came from, just ask, "What do you hear?" He replies 2 days later. His email is short. Echo delay suggests a contained space, dense material. But there's harmonic reverb. Not mechanical. More like a mouth cavity. As if the knocks are bouncing off something not quite stone. You reread that last part. Not quite stone. That same night, you receive another anonymous tip. A physical letter this time, slipped under your door.
Inside is a grainy black and white photo. It shows 13 people blurred, faces half faded by age. They're standing in front of a military truck. Some smile, most don't. Behind them is the unmistakable entrance to the salt plant at Ojin-ri. On the back of the photo, in tiny careful letters, only one came out. You take the photo to the woman from the village, the one who remembered her cousin, Go Yeonjun. She holds it in both hands, doesn't blink for a long time, then quietly, "That's him, 3rd from the left." You trace his face with your thumb. "What do you mean only one came out?" She looks at you, eyes suddenly heavy. You're thinking like a historian, but this is a ghost story now. You try to protest. She stops you with a raised hand. "My father said the plant had a well beneath it, covered up, always warm, even in winter. He said if you dropped a pebble into it, you'd hear it hit water, and then something else, like someone catching it." You ask what that has to do with the school. She shrugs. Everything flows downhill, and suddenly you see it, not metaphorically, literally. You pull up a topographic map. The school was built on a slope. So is the tunnel. So is Ojin-ri. They all form a path, not just a corridor for movement, but for containment. You start marking points. Salt plant, tunnel, school, chamber. The direction is unmistakable. It's all channeling towards something. Back in the lab, Dr. Kim calls you with a voice so flat it breaks you out of your spiral. I recheck the most recent body, the one placed. You hold your breath. It's Go Yeonjun. You sit down, fast. Dental matches. Old injuries align with his medical records. He survived whatever this was for decades. Then why bury him now? You ask. She pauses. There were signs of strangulation. Manual. Fresh, not suicide. Someone killed him and placed him down there, like he knew something. That night, you can't stay away.
You return to the school. This time, you bring chalk. You write on the concrete in block letters. Why? You sit in silence. Wait. Minute pass. Then knock. 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 You write again. Are you alone? Silence. Then knock. Knock. Toe. You hesitate. Then, how many? There's a pause. Then, knock, 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 knock. 4. 4 again. But there are 13 skeletons. And Go Yenjun. So who are the 4? You suddenly remember the whisper song. The one the folklorists called a death song. What if it wasn't a song? What if it was a warning? You run the audio file through linguistic software, slowing it to 10% speed. You isolate the hums, flatten the pitch. A pattern emerges. Not a lullaby, not a chant. A name, whispered again and again beneath the music. Era. Era. The girl from the red dust file. The one who vanished without trace. The one whose name was never matched to a body. You check the records again. She's never been found. You message Dr. Kim. Is there a female body left unidentified? She responds immediately. Yes, small frame. Estimated 15-17. Skull fracture. Wearing 2 rings on left hand. You type faster. Was one a signet ring? Dr. Kim. Yes, and the other looks like a locket fused shut. You feel your pulse in your ears. The file on Kim Era described her as wearing 2 rings. One from her sister, one from a boy she loved. You whisper her name aloud. Era. The school creaks. You don't move. You hear it. A soft exhale behind you. Not wind. Breath. You turn. No one is there. But something lingers. The smell of salt. And beneath your feet a single, soft knock. You don't go home that night. Instead, you stay on the school grounds, crouched in the farthest corner of the gym, the concrete still faintly warm beneath you. You lean against the bleachers, staring at the words you left in chalk. Why? It's faded now. No breeze, no rain, just faded. As if someone read it and answered in silence. You try sleeping, but the floor hums too loudly. Not with sound, with presence. Like the space itself is holding its breath. Like the air is swollen with things that want to be heard but can't be formed into words anymore. Just like Go Yanjun. You dream of the tunnel. You're walking down it, flashlight dimming, your fingers grazing the cold walls. You feel shapes etched in the stone lines, crosses, mouths drawn open. You keep moving until you reach the chamber. Except now, it's not empty. The 13 are standing, not skeletal, but whole, silent, all facing one direction toward a 14th figure, curled on the floor.
A girl. She looks up at you. You open your mouth, but nothing comes out. Then you wake. It's still dark. 4:17 a.m. The building groans with the weight of nothing happening. You check your phone. 1 new voicemail. Blocked number. You press play. All you hear is breathing. Shallow. Dry. Then, a faint child's voice. Don't listen when it asks. Then it clicks off. You replay it. Same message. Same voice. You realize it's the same tone as the audio from the chamber. Same pitch. Same child. Era. Your blood goes cold. You call Dr. Kim, even though it's nearly dawn. She answers, groggy. I need to see the body, you say. The girl. There's a pause. Then, I already prepped it. I knew you'd ask. You meet at the lab before sunrise. The body is small, delicate. Still in the fetal position they found her in. One of the rings, the signet, is cracked. The locket, fused shut, reflects the ceiling light. Kim brings over a tool and gently works the locket open. Inside, a photo, black and white, a boy and girl, smiling, awkwardly posed in school uniforms. In the corner, a name, Yen Jun Jiawon Era, 1943. You close your eyes. They weren't just 2 names on a file. They were connected. Maybe the only thing either of them had left. You whisper, more to yourself than anyone else. They were trying to find each other. Dr. Kim places a hand on the table, and they were buried 10 feet apart.
You lean in closer. There's something odd about Era's spines, lightly twisted, unnatural for a burial posture. You ask Kim. She nods. We found pressure fractures, as if she was moved after death, or repositioned. By who? You check the rest of the remains. No trauma that would explain the skull fracture. No other signs of struggle. You ask, could someone have put her there carefully? Kim shrugs. Maybe. Then her voice drops. Or she wasn't dead when they did. That hits you like a truck. Your mind rewinds to the earlier whisper. Don't listen when it asks, what was it? You find yourself back in the chamber beneath the school by dusk. This time, you go further into the second room, the one you'd opened but barely explored. It smells different now. Sweeter, like dried flowers and rot. On the floor, a new symbol in chalk, a circle inside a triangle. It wasn't there before. You don't remember drawing it. You don't remember bringing chalk this time. Still, you kneel down and place your hand on the ground. It feels warm again, and you realize this space is reacting to you, not just passively, personally. You test something. You whisper, Era? Nothing. You whisper again, are you still here? Then, slowly, from the darkness, 5 knocks. Tap, 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 tap. You sit down hard. Your breath turns shallow. She's counting something. You pull out your phone, start a recording. 5, you whisper. 5. What? Silence. Thin voice. Soft. Dry. Close. Years. I waited. You don't scream. You can't. You look up. There's no one. But the temperature drops 5 degrees in an instant. She waited 5 years. For what? You reach into your bag, pull out the photo, the one of the 13 people standing in front of the salt plant. You lay it on the floor. The knocks return 1, then 2, then silence. You point. Yenjin? Silence. Then a whisper barely audible. He promised.
You feel tears welling in your eyes. They tried to erase you, you whisper. They can't. You sit there for an hour. No more knocks, no more voices, just the quiet of something finally seen. Back at the lab, you mark Era as positively identified, and for the first time, you start drafting a proper report, one with names, photos, histories, no numbers, no subjects, just people. Dr. Kim places her hand on your shoulder. We've still got 3 names unaccounted for. You nod. But at least now, you say, they'll be looked for. You finally write it all down. Not the sanitized academic version, no citations, no peer-reviewed euphemisms, but the real version. The one with chalk messages, audio whispers, locket photos, and a girl who counted out her own silence, 1 knock at a time. You give it a working title, The Hollow Mouth. It feels right. You send a draft to Dr. Kim. She calls within minutes. No one will believe this. You laugh. I don't need them to. I just need them to stop ignoring it. But the thing is, people are starting to believe. Quietly. Your inbox begins to fill first with journalists, then university researchers, then anonymous names you've never heard from before. Some share old photos, others, snippets of family diaries. One man sends a voice memo from his grandfather, recorded before the old man died. There's something buried under that gym, not just bones. I saw a man disappear under there when I was 14. Never came back up. We were told to say nothing, so we didn't. You forward it to Kim. She sends you back a dotchpeg, a diagram, old, labeled in Japanese. It shows 5 subchambers beneath the gym. Only 2 have been explored. Wait, you say aloud. There's more? Kim confirms it. The ground penetrating radar you used? It was limited to 10 meters. This diagram shows a 2nd level deeper, sealed. You feel dizzy. All this time, You've been standing above just the surface layer, the shallow grave, the entrance. But below it, another level, another story. You both file for emergency excavation clearance, but it's denied. Too dangerous, too sensitive. You know what that really means. Too true. So you do what people like you always do when the institutions refuse to help. You go back alone. One final time. You return to the tunnel at night, the wind sharp and loud with summer rain. You lower yourself into the chamber, flashlight beam bouncing off the soot-marked walls. You reach the far end where the symbols are and start knocking, testing for hollows. After 10 minutes, you find it. A vibration in the concrete, not felt by ear, but in your bones. You kneel, press your ear against it. There's something underneath, and then something knocks back. Just once. Soft, gentle. You pause, then knock again. This time 3 knocks, and a hiss. You jolt backward, but the air doesn't change. It's not fear anymore. It's curiosity, from both sides. You reach for your chalk and draw a simple, on the wall. Silence, then faintly, when you leave, don't close the hatch. You freeze, not written, not whispered, thought. It lands in your mind like a raindrop in still water. Clear, unmistakable. This place doesn't just listen, it remembers. You whisper, "Who are you?" And the thought comes again. We were the quiet ones. Now, we are the echoes. You stay, heart thudding. Not from terror, but awe. They aren't ghosts. Not exactly. They're resonance. The trapped voices of history, layered and repeated, long after the mouths that made them turn to bone. Historians still argue whether trauma can be imprinted in a place, if emotion, pain, even voices can persist long after death. Tonight, you stop arguing, you just listen, and they speak to you not in stories, but in memory. The heat of 1944, the sting of salt in the air, the weight of metal doors closing, the final breath, the final word, the final knock. You whisper again, "What do you want me to do?" Silence. Then, remember. You close your eyes, you breathe deep, and when you open them again, the lights above you flicker and stay on. You leave the chamber without sealing the hatch, not out of neglect, but because the dead shouldn't be locked away anymore. Above ground, morning is breaking. Birds chirp, traffic hums. A dog barks in the alley. Life resumes. But the hum beneath your feet is still there. Still soft, still awake, still echoing.
By sunrise, you're not the same person who first knocked on the gym floor. You don't sleep that day. You don't eat much either. You sit by your window, listening, not for sounds in the walls or whispers in the dark, but for what's missing. For silence that isn't really silence anymore. The kind that hums, that repeats, that waits. Your draft of the Hollow Mouth goes live as an anonymous post, nothing too flashy. No viral stunts, just a detailed write-up, part memoir, part investigation. You include the photo of the 13, the red dust file, the tunnel maps, and the diagram showing 5 sealed chambers. No names, no location, but enough detail that someone out there will recognize the shape of truth. Within a week, it spreads. Within 2, the government denies it. Within 3, independent teams begin arriving quietly in the city. They don't wear badges, but they ask the same questions you did. And they all know the name Era. One day, a package arrives. No return address. Inside, a reel of microfilm, fragile and yellowed, wrapped in old newspaper. You take it to the last place in the city that still has a microfilm reader, an old archive room in a disused wing of a university library. The air smells like paper and ghost stories. You feed the reel.
Frame after frame of red dust materials, personnel logs, soil surveys, psychological evaluations of detained students. The tone is clinical, heartless. Then you stop on one frame, and your breath catches. A letter, dated 943. From a school principal, anonymized, to military command. It reads, "We've done as instructed. The gymnasium is now built over the venting chamber. No civilian access. However, several students report hearing singing beneath the floorboards. Request further instructions." You print that frame. That letter confirms it. They knew. They heard her voice. They heard all of them. You send the image to Dr. Kim. She replies with only 2 words. "Case closed?" But you know better. That's not how this works. When memory is buried, it doesn't fade, it ferments. It sours. It grows teeth. You revisit the site one last time. The school is still there. But things have changed. Construction tarps now stretch across one side of the building. A new heritage survey has begun official cover for unofficial digging. You're not invited in, but that's okay. You've already been below. You walk the perimeter. You look at the gym. Then you notice something. The chalk symbol you once drew circle inside a triangle has been copied. On the door. Not your handwriting. Someone else has been listening. A maintenance worker walks by, pushing a broom. You nod toward the door. You know what that means? He looks up, puzzled. No. Kids draw weird stuff sometimes. You nod. Sometimes they do. You leave the school and walk toward the train station. The sky is a soft, sleepy gray. People move past you, unaware of the truth pressed into the concrete beneath their feet. But you're not here to sound the alarm. You're here to remember. Because sometimes the job isn't to fix the past. It's to witness it properly, and to let it rise up breath by breath, knock by knock, until it fills the space it was always denied. A few days later, Dr. Kim forwards you a forensic memo. A new scan. Chamber 3 has been opened. No bodies, just thousands of scratch marks on the walls. And in the center, a single child's shoe, polished, untouched, placed there, deliberately. On the bottom of the shoe, a word scratched into the sole. Dero Zima. Don't come in. You stare at it. Because maybe this wasn't a place meant to be explored. Maybe it wasn't a burial site. Maybe it was a door. And maybe, just maybe, someone inside is still holding it shut. You don't go back after that. Not to the gym, not to the chamber. You don't need to. You've heard enough, you've seen enough. And now that the echoes have names again, maybe, just maybe, they can rest. It rains the morning you finally decide to leave the city. Not a dramatic storm, just the kind of slow, steady drizzle that makes everything quieter. More thoughtful, as if the air itself knows it's time to hush. You take the long way to the train station, walking past the school one last time. The construction fence is still up, fluttering in the breeze. A sign now reads, "Scheduled for demolition, pending review." You suspect that review will take a while. Too many eyes on it now. You stop for a moment, across the street. The building looks tired, its windows dulled, paint peeling from the doors. It doesn't look haunted. It looks relieved, like it's finally done keeping the secrets of other people's crimes. The fence is covered in chalk graffiti now. Little doodles, messages, names, most meaningless, but one catches your eye. "They sang to me last night. I listened." You smile. Not because it's sweet, but because it's working. The story is spreading. In the train car, you find a window seat. You're halfway out of the city before you realize your backpack still holds the photo, Yeonjun and Era, laughing with their heads tilted toward each other, like they were mid-joke when the shutter clicked. You slide it into the back of your notebook. Not to forget it, just to give it a resting place. A kind of burial. Dr. Kim texts you later that evening. Her message is short. New scan. Final chamber opened. Empty again. You write back. Scratches? She replies. None. Just soft soil, like it was never sealed properly. You reread that a few times. Never sealed properly. Then who or what was it built to contain? You close your phone. You don't need the answer. Some doors stay shut, not because they're locked, but because those behind them choose to keep them that way. You think of Era. You think of her voice drifting up through the floorboards of a middle school gym, refusing to be forgotten. You think of Go Yeon-jun singing in the dark until his body betrayed his hope. And you think of the 4 knocks, how each one might not have been a cry for help, but a warning. Some truths are meant to come gently, in dreams, in songs, in the soft scrape of chalk across stone. And in the end, you've learned this. History doesn't hide. It waits. It settles into the quiet places under floorboards, behind false walls, in the dark spaces beneath our memories, until someone finally stops, listens, and says, I hear you. And once you've heard it, you can never unhear it again. You arrive at your new place late, the sky a soft violet. You don't unpack, you just open the window, breathe in the clean air, and let the silence fall over you. Not empty silence, not dead silence, the kind that hums, the kind that echoes, the kind that tells you you're not alone. So now, as we settle into the last stretch of the night, you can let your breath slow, let your shoulders ease. The rain might still be tapping softly outside your window, or maybe, if you listen closely, it's just the echo of footsteps long gone. Whatever it is, it's gentle now. You're safe. The voices we followed through this story aren't here to frighten you. They've whispered, yes, knocked, hummed, and flickered beneath the surface of time, but not to haunt. Only to remind that the past never truly disappears. It drifts, it finds quiet corners, and waits for someone curious enough, kind enough, to lean in and say, tell me. And when they do, the past speaks back. Not in thunderclaps or screams, but in small, persistent ways. A bell, a song, a single name breathed into dust. Tonight, those voices have found you. And maybe now, they can rest. Let that thought carry you as you drift off somewhere soft and warm, far from tunnels and flickering lights. Imagine, if you like, that you're lying in a quiet room, the walls humming low with memory, the air cool and still. There's no knocking now, no whispers, just the long exhale of a story finally told. And in that silence, you sleep. Sweet dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.